right, here we are on a Tuesday, One Bills Live. Chris Brown, Steve Tasker with you. Pleased to be joined here in studio by Bills General Manager Brandon Beane in the wake of the 2024 NFL Draft. The class is set, and, I guess undrafted rookie free agent signings were going to be completed here in the coming days, I would assume. But you got a bunch of new guys on your roster, and I know on Saturday night you felt really good about, the blend of players that you felt you had. What do you feel is the overarching kind of theme of the class that you were able to assemble here?
Yeah, I think we got some guys, as you go down the draft, obviously at the top of the draft, you're going, this guy is either a day one starter or a key reserve, or, hey, I think he's going to start in a year, wherever you're at. As you go down, you're going, all right, is this guy going to be a really good backup, a functional starter, for 2 or 3 games, but best role as a backup. And then you talk about fourth down, special teams, things like that. So we tried to hit a lot of those areas. As you go down your board, you start looking less at value, on your board, and more how do they make the team and filling some position holes, versus at the top you're going, I'm trying to get the best damn player I can get. And so, I would say the other theme we really tried to hit was a lot of our Bills DNA beyond the skill set. And you can be Bills DNA as a 7th rounder and not have Bills DNA as a 1st rounder. We put the talent where it is, but just that leadership, professional habits, smart for your position, all those intangibles that will help you not only achieve where we see your physical talents, but exceed them.
One of the things that came out this week, and leading up to the draft, we're in this mock draft season, and where everybody's talking about trading up, trading down. It was just reported, Albert Breer came out today, and I wanted to mention this. So New England's sitting there at number 3, and everybody's asking you, all our fans are like, hey, why don't you trade in the top 10 and get one of those guys, right? And we tried to say, listen, first of all, it's really expensive. And secondly, you got to get somebody to say yes. So New England's sitting there at number 3. It's been reported they were offered Minnesota's 11th and the 23rd pick in the first round, and next year's 2025 first rounder, and swapping 3 picks back in this draft so that the Vikings would get New England's 3 picks in later rounds, and they would split. So the Vikings would get better picks in those rounds because New England's number 3. Yeah. So they were getting 3 1s and just flipping some other picks, and New England said, no, we're not going to do it. It's expensive to move up. Oh, my gosh. 3 1s, and they wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, that tells you what it is, and quarterback is the premium position. You got to do that. And when you trade up that high in the round to get one of these premier players, I would say probably the biggest trade-up we remember for a receiver, and I know that's what people wanted, was the Julio Jones deal. And listen, they did make a Super Bowl, but tell me where, for a non-quarterback, it's made sense to give up, future ones and all that stuff. It sounds sexy at the time, but it's I bet you a lot of teams had buyer's remorse after they did it, and it just we felt there was depth at this class. I get it if you're going, hey, there's 2 or 3 receivers that you'll ever be able to get your hands on this draft, and if you don't go get one of those, you're SOL for the season. And we didn't see it that way, and just, again, it allowed us to fill other holes and find other players that can help us going forward.
Yeah. Right. I think as people learn more about Keon Coleman after he was your first pick of the draft, they realize he's 20 years old, and I think if you couple that with the fact that he was largely a 2-sport athlete even halfway through his college career. So I think it's fair to say he doesn't have the reps that a single-sport football player that went through the same path that he did would have. Do you feel like there's a lot that is still untapped with Keon in terms – the physical ability is readily apparent and the things he's able to do on a football field. But I feel as a 20-year-old – with a 2-sport athlete that was as good as he was, I got to believe you feel there's a lot of untapped stuff to him that your coaching staff is going to have to get out of him, right, going forward? Like, there's a lot there. Like, high ceiling, I guess, it's a long way of saying high ceiling.
Yeah, you spelled it out there exactly, Chris. You're talking about drafting a guy who's 20, who's got we know the physical talents he has now, but he's not completely grown. We've all, seen young men that are 18, 19, 20, 21. He's not 23 or 24. I think at those points you're like, well, they're probably, for the most part, peaked out from that standpoint. But some of these guys still grow. Who knows? He might grow another half inch or something. Like we don't truly know. And just like he's already got like a 38-inch vertical, we feel there's room to even improve his explosiveness. And so other things that that he got from playing basketball, some of that short area quicks that you have playing, they have helped him. And so we liked a lot of things. We think he's still got some rawness to his game, yet a lot of upside. And you see the contested catches, the basketball ability, the back shoulder. He is a lot of bigger guys, I would explain to the media, can be stiff
tight,
and rigid. He's a very loose athlete to be a bigger guy. And I think people really got caught up in the 40 time versus play speed. You saw, I think he had the fastest gauntlet time or whatever. You saw more of his play speed actually running, tracking balls than his true track 40 time.
And being a kid so young, you're right. And I remember as a player, and during my career with me and also players I've seen and guys Brownie's covered, we talked about here in the building, you're 20, you're going to be a completely different dude at 24, 25 after you've been an adult and been in the league. So there really is, you do have to kind of project where you think he's going to be, and you kind of get to know what kind of guy he's like, and you think, okay, he's on the right track and he's got the right things in place character-wise to carry him there, right?
Yeah, I mean, and listen, we all felt his energy and stuff like he's very young. He's growing into a young man, and that's all part of what we want our culture, and then the facilities that we have here, the staff that we have in not only the strength and conditioning, but our sports performance group with Joe Collins and that staff. We think there are a lot of things that we can do. The coaches are going to coach him on the field. They're going to continue to work on releases, which he has actually a pretty good release package, but they're going to work on more routes than he ran in college, all those nuances of the game of actual football. But there's a lot of things we can do behind the scenes, and he's a competitive dude, and that's one of the things that says when you get competitive dudes like that, they give you the best chance. They're going to want to come in when you show them and lay it out. This is the trajectory we have for you.
Yeah.
Give us a little insight on Cole Bishop, a guy that's really intriguing. For a lot of people, it's hard to evaluate a position they don't ever watch. They're watching the ball, and unless he makes the tackle, they don't see what a safety really does. But when you do talk to him and watch his film, he seems to be out ahead of it mentally.
He is. I think that's where you start. This guy's a good athlete. You're talking about a guy who's in the low 4.4s. We were just talking about speed. You see his speed. A guy that played down in the box at Utah, but also showed he can go in the back end. We've obviously been spoiled here with Micah and Jordan for all these years. The versatility in Sean's defense that he likes the safeties to have. It gives him more options, more disguises of blitzes, who's covering who, what are we in, what looks are we in. We were even installing a 3-safety package last year with adding Taylor Rapp to the group. And so having a guy that's not always in the core or in the box or always in the deep half, it keeps, offenses from being able to get you on a mismatch on a guy in here. And Cole can match up, with receiving weapons, whether it's a tight end, back, receiver down when he's down there. And then you're talking about the DNA I talked about earlier. This guy is super smart, professional habits, his personality. I told people all along once I met him, he's like Dalton Kincaid at a different position. Coincidentally, I was like, man, we were talking about Dalton with him, but it's really a lot of the same. He's just going to come in, yes sir, no sir. I'm going to let my play speak for myself. Keon's a little different. Keon's going to talk a little bit, which is part of his swagger.
He talk you into it.
Yeah. But we're excited to get Cole, and we were super fired up when that opportunity.
Did you ask him if he shaved yet? I mean, I know they called him the baby-faced assassin at Utah. I don't know if that guy met a razor yet. I mean, talk about a baby face. Oh my gosh.
He probably hadn't. I mean, shoot, again, another guy who's 21. and you know, an underclassman, and so it's funny. It made me feel old. He was born on the same day as my kid who's in college. So I was like, geez, this is getting crazy.
Yeah.
Saturday night after you wrapped up, you described your team as one in transition, and with the roster turnover this offseason, we understand why. I know the influx of young leaders was important. You drafted 4 captains, but you also mentioned getting players with an edge. First, just for the listening audience, describe what a player with an edge is for you. And then second, why did you feel you needed to increase the edge quotient for this roster?
Yeah, I mean, you listen, not everyone, they all embrace some form of physicality, right? This is football. It's not flag, it's tackle. So everyone understands what comes with that. But Steve can tell you, like, there were guys, they seek the contact. They get a high off of the contact. Others do it because they have to do it to do their job. Hey, there's some safeties that want to go get a guy down, and then there's some safeties that want to blow you up. And I'm not talking about Cole here, but a dog is just embracing the physicality of the sport. They're playing to what I call the echo of the whistle. Mm-hmm. They're not looking for any boundary, and we can talk about Ray Davis. Like, you know, I don't think unless we got to stop the clock in a 2-minute situation, I don't think you're going to see Ray Davis step out of bounds. He is going to, and I don't care if it's a linebacker, a safety, a D lineman, he's going to bend it back in there and make them have to get him down, and he's going to see if he can punish them. The same as I talked about in pass pro. He's not looking to match and mirror. If you come in there and you got your pads up and your chin's up, he's going to see if he can hit you under the chin.
And one of the guys that you got later in the draft, Javon Solomon, edge rusher, kind of first thing you think is, wow, I don't know, he's kind of a tweener kind of guy, but then you kind of read his measurables. The guy's got like orangutan arms. He's like got arms that are like 34 inches.
Yeah.
So he can really play the edge of a defense even though he's not really tall.
Yeah.
Good pass rusher, too. He seems to me like a really slippery dude on the edge.
Very natural pass rusher. You know, guys have it or they don't. There's guys with measurables, can run 40s, are explosive, high vertical, but they don't have that innate feel or they've got a stiffness. Yes, he's just under 6'1", so he's not as tall as most. If he was 6'3" with those arms and the way he rushes, he'd have gone a lot higher in the draft. But he overcomes his height with his arm length. He's got some natural moves. He's got a feel. Some guys can't find the quarterback in the pocket. They get lost in their guy, and they have this guy, when you watch him rush, you can feel he knows when the quarterback's stepping up. He knows when he needs to spin back inside. He knows when the quarterback's about to bail and he can keep going around. He knows when I got to use the long arm and try and walk the guy back to cage rush a little bit. So you don't just fall into 16 sacks. Yes, there's some that happen. The guy rolled into him, but you're not going to get 16 of those in a season. And obviously he had 32 or 33 for his career. And looking forward to watching him. In our system, I really thought 3-4 teams would really value this guy high. But he was still there, and for us, he'd be kind of a DPR, maybe even a joker role.
Yeah, because he's got that motorcycle lean too when he gets around the edge. It's really kind of cool to see him operate. You described Tylan Grable, Travis Clayton as developmental players. We know why. Grable's still young at the position. Clayton's never played the position.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Clayton falls into this category as an international player, but you've had your fair share of late-round picks who, on a veteran roster, weren't good enough to make the 53. You put them to your practice squad, and then you get guys poached, which has to be enormously frustrating because then they go to other rosters and play on a 53, and it happened again last year. How do you – is there a way that you've kind of devised with your personnel? How do we get around that? And I realize there might be a few more openings this year with the roster turnover that you've had, but I imagine, you make that draft investment, you want to develop them yourself, not for somebody else. And yet, you can't keep everybody. I get it. But have you tried to say – because I got to believe, knowing how much you value your draft choices, you're like – there's got to be a better way to hold on to these guys.
Yeah, you try your best. Listen, you're always bringing competition and depth because you don't know when injuries will strike, and you'd rather them, in my world, I'd rather them strike in preseason while I've still got the roster up to 90. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen that way. I mean, you'd like no injuries, but yeah, I mean, the young man we drafted last year goes to New England and ends up intercepting us in the game.
Right.
And they re-signed him.
Yeah, and that's the worst thing that can happen.
Right.
You're like, geez, and yeah, we lost Nick Broker, who went on Houston's team, and you're right. It is that fine line. They're going to put film out there in the preseason. You got to kind of play them. You want to keep as many. Maybe this year with the turnover. I definitely, when we got into those 5th, 6th, 7th, was talking, all right, do we think we can keep this guy if we're healthy? We know if injuries happen, yes. And at the end, you're right. The odds of us keeping all 10 is probably not realistic, but we're adding competition and we're adding depth, and the cream will rise to the top. Hopefully, if we can't, we can get them back to P squad, but obviously there's no guarantees.
Well, thanks for coming in. I know you're still signing guys. Quintez Cephus yesterday signed another wideout. I mean, before you go, what about what are we looking at here in the coming days? You're about done, right?
Yeah, we're still. You're never done. We're in the mid 80s. Now adding Quintez. He's a veteran receiver. Had some success as a kind of a Z or a slot. Played inside out. We in our offense, kind of that number 4 role, can move up and down the line of scrimmage. Not a burner by any pace, but good hands, good instincts. Chip on his shoulder after what he's been through with the gambling thing that some of these guys this day and age that it's on their phones and they do it. But looking forward to getting him in here and getting him on the field. But other than that, we'll continue. Teams will move on from some guys. I've seen even some names this morning that are being purged because they were drafted over in the early rounds. So we'll continue to monitor that. We've added free agents in the past in May and June here and there. So it's not a rush to get to 90. The goal is, by mid-June to be right at it. What are we going to take? Let's take the best 90, most competitive group team that we can to St. John Fisher and be ready for a new season.
Brandon, thanks for the time as always.
Brandon.
Thanks for recapping the draft with us. We appreciate it.
You got it.